Assalamu alaikum, and we are now joined by Wafa Al-Udaini, a Gaza-based journalist. At 17 after 9 o'clock South African time, we are looking at a very devastating story with Wafa regarding two Palestinians killed in Israeli raid on the occupied West Bank. And the two youngsters are, very sadly, Mohammed Azizi and Abdul Rahman Sob, who were killed by the occupied forces during an overnight raid in Nablus. Wafa Al-Udaini, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much for having me.
Shocking and sad news indeed. Why were these two youth targeted and killed in the process?
Okay, this is occupation, and no one can ask the occupation why you are committing crimes against the people who you are occupied and who you are oppressed, indeed. Indeed, two Palestinian young men were murdered yesterday by Israeli gunfire overnight on Saturday, and nearly 9 others got injured, including a pregnant woman and one Palestinian is in a critical condition. The two martyrs are identified as Muhammad Aziz, 25 years old, and Abdurrahman Sabah, 28 years old. They were killed by live ammunition. Indeed, this was after dozens of occupation military vehicles backed by drones surrounded and stormed a house with anti-tank missiles and heavy gunfire in Al Yasmina neighborhood in Nablus in the occupied West Bank. Indeed, Nablus residents yesterday they said that they heard like massive explosions and also they heard calls from mosque minarets urged Palestinian youth to confront the Israeli armed forces. Like this becomes like a daily basis and a daily blatant violations by the occupied forces against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. And since the start of this year, Israeli occupation executed over than 70 Palestinians, including women and children. And also, as you all heard about the journalist, the veteran journalist, Shireen Abu Aqla, who were also got killed by the occupation fire this year in the West Bank. So, like yesterday, there is like the Israeli Prime Minister said something about those Palestinians who their forces killed. Indeed, he said that we will not allow the terrorists to come to come to us. We will attack them in their homes. I mean, in front of their families, in front of their children, and so on. And indeed, this is the most racist words or
Okay, Wafa, can you hear me? Your picture has just frozen. I think we'll leave it there, unfortunately. It's going to be a bit of a challenge trying to hook up again with Wafa Al-Udaini. But I think, alhamdulillah, she has given us the gist of the killing of two young Palestinian men. Mohammed Azizi and Abdul Rahman Sob were killed by the occupied forces during an overnight raid in Nablus. And the temerity of the occupied forces suggesting the prime minister, as a matter of fact, saying that they will go to the homes of what they term as terrorists, young Palestinian people, and kill them in their homes in front of their loved ones. And this is the inhumanity of the occupiers. All we can say is Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest, and their day too shall come. The time is exactly 9:22 a.m. and I'd like to just share something before we go to the ad break. It's really about, I just kind of wonder how many of us do know about this piece of history, and I'd like to share it with you. It's 5 minutes in history and was forwarded to me on one of the WhatsApp groups that I'm on. I was quite amazed by it because when you talk about the Ottoman Empire, I kind of thought it was like hundreds of years behind me. But in fact, today marks 99 years of the fall of the Ottoman Empire. So, on this day, on July the 24th in 1923, the Treaty of Lausanne was signed by Turkey and the Allied powers that fought in World War One. With the signing of the treaty, the 600-year-old Ottoman Empire came formally to an end. And I kind of wonder if that treaty was never signed, what would Turkey look like today? What would the rest of the Middle East look like today if the Ottomans were still in rule? Something to think about, but also something to reflect upon, that today obviously is the 99th year of the fall of the Ottoman Empire. 9:24 exactly, news and views right here on Salam Media. In a minute or two, we are going to be talking with our next guest, and I believe that is Sandile Swana, who is a political analyst. So do stand by.